Hey guys, what's up? We're back. And yeah, as you can see by the title, our SMRs, you know, the next Nvidia. Okay? So basically, I wanted to discuss this because I've been doing a lot of research when it comes to SMRs. And we're going to dive deep into, well, somewhat deep into what an SMR is, and then a few definitions of what that is, the use case of SMRs. We're going to talk about two different companies that are currently um, that are currently being publicly traded in the stock market, right? And we're going to talk about their current price and whether or not you should invest into them, and why I do believe SMRs are pretty much the could be the energy source for the future in terms of powering a lot of these data centers, for energy. So so we're going to continue to talk about that and why I believe that SMRs are basically the energy source for powering the future. Currently, especially with the rise of AI, and then also us having to create large amounts of data centers in order to go ahead and power these artificial intelligence and things of that nature. So, because of that, those require large amounts of electricity, a lot of energy, and you know, it 24-hour, 24/7 in terms of electricity and energy, that we need some type of battery that can energize these data centers. And we're going to talk about those type of things. So we're going to go into what an SMR is, and basically, yeah. So basically, a SMR stands for small modular reactor. Okay, so it's the concept of this thing is the traditional nuclear power plants are absolute giants, right? So they're based off of a smaller, more compact initial design of like nuclear plants, but these are supposed to be smaller, more compact, in order to be, um, I guess, not take up a lot of space and be used as like some sort of like a small battery pack. It doesn't require too much maintenance. Okay, um, so they so basically, traditional nuclear plants take years to build, and they require a lot of money, and they require a lot of water and rivers, lakes in order to cool these nuclear plants. Just like how we need a lot of water to cool data centers as well, right? So SMRs come in handy because they are the small modular reactors are used based off of clean energy, and they basically are a smaller size of these giant power plants, about one third of the size of these standardized nuclear plants, right? Um, and they can also be mass produced in a factory. So a factory or a business or one of these SMR businesses, they they can mass produce these small modular reactors and then sell them out to data center companies in order to have them be used as the energy source for their data center, 24/7 energy source for their data center. Okay, so that is the progression. And why is it that this is probably the way of the future? It's because um, we have different types of energy sources or that can we can use to power, other than the traditional electricity factor. We have what we like to we have solar power, right? And we also have wind power. Those are pretty much the two. And the issue with solar power is, again, um, yes, it stores the solar, energy in order to power up appliances and things in your house, but it needs to store a lot of it. And again, when there's no sun, then it reduces the power within these solar panels. Even though, yes, of course, they can store them for later use, but again, it's not enough power for something like a data center, which they really are relying on a 24/7 energy source, right? And then you have the wind turbines and things of that nature. And again, whenever there's no wind, you're not getting any power, right? So wind energy is also something that's not very reliant for these data centers, right? In terms of energy, so those two things are out of pretty much the wheelhouse in terms of having some type of strong, consistent energy for them, right? And again, that's where we land on using nuclear energy, like how we've used nuclear energy in different types of ways, but using it as a energy source to power these data plants, right? Because they can be reused. They produce a lot of energy, and depending on how the companies use it, they can actually be a pretty clean and used in order to not produce too much waste if they're basically reusing some of these nuclear wastes in order to generate this energy, right? So basically, the benefits of SMR is they're small, they take up a tiny physical footprint, right? Um, they're modular, so trucks or trains can ship them anywhere, and also passive safety. Most designs use natural physics like gravity or natural air convention to cool them down automatically during a blackout, eliminating human error or pump failures, right? So during the blackout, they can automatically cool based upon the structure and design of some of these companies, okay? So we're gonna talk about two companies that are basically on the stock market for SMRs, and we're going to talk about their use case scenarios, something that's positive for them, like their advantages and disadvantages, and why you should invest into them, and why I'm investing into them, because no matter where we go, we're going to need energy, and I feel like nuclear is going to be the energy source for the future, depending on how we're trying to move with AI. Also, in China, they already have SMRs that are built in certain places already. Unlike us, we do have a company that does meet certain licensing criteria in order to start. But again, there's red tape, there's contracts to get pushed back, et cetera, right? So we're talking about we have NewScale versus Oklo. So NewScale, their ticker is SMR, and then Oklo their ticker is OKLO. Okay, so let's take a look here. So I'm going to let you guys see my screen. Okay. So here we go. So NewScale Power is the closest thing to traditional nuclear plant, just shrunk down to size. It uses water to cool the reactor, similar to standard utility setups. We could talk about why that water to cool the reactor, it can be a disadvantage for this ticker here, for this company, SMR, because if they're going to be used for data centers, which also require water to cool them down, then you're having two giant things that's basically using a lot of water in order to cool down the their situation there. So that may not be in the best interest of certain groups or factions that feel like using a lot of water to cool these things is not for the best. And yeah, so you want to keep that in mind when it comes to NewScale. Their SMRs still require you to cool them down with water. And again, if they're going to be using it for data centers, which also require large amounts of water, that could be a conflict, right? So advantages is regulatory crown. They're currently the only SMR company with an official design certification from the U.S. Nuclear Regulatory Commission, which is a positive. Familiar tech because they use water-cooled technology. Utilities and governments find their design easier to trust and understand. So that's an advantage, the fact that they're using the old guard in terms of how they're using the water-cooled technology. That's something that governments can understand because that's how it's always been traditionally, right? Disadvantage is the water dependency. They still require massive continuous access to water resources for cooling, okay? Financial struggles. They previously had to cancel a major project in Utah because rising material inflation drove up electricity prices for local buyers. That's also an issue right there. And then OCLO, right? So Oklo, um, which is a Silicon Valley favorite, right? Which is heavily backed by OpenAI, Sam Altman. They build micro reactors that focus on selling power directly to buyers rather than selling the physical plant hardware. So it's more like a licensing infrastructure that OKLO is doing or Oklo is doing. They're not actually selling the hardware like NewScale will be doing with their SMRs. They're more like licensing those hardwares to these companies. And I'm assuming because they're licensing these hardware to the companies that Oklo will be taking care of like, you know, monitoring with cleaning with all those things that, you know, that you have to worry about when it comes to basically, um, you know, nuclear energy and things of that nature. So it looks like they would be doing more like a, you know how you have software that you license out software, like software companies license out their software instead of selling it to companies, just like what Microsoft did. They're doing the same thing, which is pretty much how a lot of things that we use today, how that infrastructure is. So like think about Netflix. You know, we pay a subscription to Netflix, right? So they'll just be paying a subscription to Oklo. So data centers will be paying a subscription fee or cost to Oklo in order to use the energy that is generated from the SMRs, where Oklo will then have people there to maintain these things, to cool them, to work on them, to fix them, to clean them, all the maintenance is required. So yeah. So Advantages is zero water needed. They use liquid sodium metal in heat pipe system. It cools using natural air convections, meaning they can build a reactor in the middle of a dry desert. That's pretty cool. The business model is tech companies do not buy the reactor. They just sign a power purchase agreement, PPA, to buy the electricity. Oklo owns, builds, and maintains the entire facility. So they're licensing it out. Disadvantage, the sodium freezing risk. Liquid sodium behaves like metal. If the temperature drops too low during the maintenance, it can freeze solid inside the pipes, causing major engineering headaches. That's also a thing, right? Fuel bottlenecks, they rely heavily on HALEU fuel, which is high assay, or I don't know, low enriched uranium, which currently faces a severe global supply chain shortage. Okay, so it looks like they require uranium, and there's a certain country that just actually found uranium in the north side of their country, which is Nigeria. So and the uranium is going on. The battle for uranium is currently a thing. So let's see what this says. So why SMRs are the future of AI energy? Let's take a look here. The B-roll of immense glowing AI data centers, data room transitioning into a graph showing skyrocket electricity demands. The AI energy crisis. AI modules like ChatGPT and Gemini consume exponentially more electricity than standard Google searches. Tech giants are desperate for power, but they face two massive roadblocks. Like what I said, wind and solar are intermittent, right? The sun does not always shine and the wind does not always blow. AI data centers cannot go offline even for a second, right? That is true. Grid congestion. The traditional electricity grid is maxed out. We know that in Texas. Tech companies cannot wait 5 to 7 years for utilities to hook up to new power lines. So SMR solution, which provide a 24/7 zero carbon based power, baseload power, because they are small and do not require massive water sources, especially OKLO or Oklo. Tech giants can build an SMR directly next to their data center and completely bypassing the local power grid. So I think that's pretty cool, right? And let's talk about what their prices are. So currently, right now, if you were to go to the their ticker, right, in the stock market, you will see that SMR currently their current ticker price, I believe, is $10.27, and then Oklo ticker price, or their stock price, is $52, something like that. So there's both of companies, as you can tell, are still very cheap in terms of what their what their potential value is to the economy, to power, to energy sources, the future scale of these things, right? And how we're going to need these because, again, artificial intelligence is a part of our daily lives now. Um, and we don't know what direction it may go, how it is going to go, but we're going to need the energy source that comes from nuclear energy, right? So yeah, so they're still really cheap. To me, I do like Oklo better, only because what it covers, right? They're not selling the hardware, and we don't live in a very ownership type of society. They're more like licensing out the hardware for data centers or companies to use, and then they're doing the maintenance, which I like. They can hire people to do those things. They can create a lot of job opportunities for people to do those maintenances. It can really be a very good thing in the economy. And then SMR or New Scale, right? SMR is a ticker. New Scale is the company name. Um, you buy the hardware, and I'm assuming the company that purchased it has to deal with all the maintenance of it, hiring people to take care of it, and things of that nature, which can be tedious to a lot of these companies. And whenever there's like, let's say, newer designs, or maybe there's things that can be tweaked to be better, how's that gonna be handled, right? When you're licensing something, usually those companies take care of like the upgrades, the newer designs, newer concepts. But when you buy something, you're going to have to continuously buy the better and better version, or find someone that can adjust those versions to industry standard, or whatever. Right? There's always a positive and a negative with things. When you're licensing, the price of those things can increase severely. When you purchase something, you still have the cost of something being outdated, right? So it's up to whatever direction. But I personally like Oklo more. I'm invested into both of them. I have a couple of shares of Oklo, and I have a couple of shares of New Scale. It's only $10 a share for New Scale. So if you put in $100, you already got 10 shares, which is the no-brainer. If you put in 200, you got 20. If you put in 500, you got like, you know, you got another good amount. So yeah, so basically, why would you not? You put in 500, you put in $500, you got 50 of them. So why would you not? Right? So you got 50 shares of a company. You put in $1,000, you got 100 shares of said company, and with 100 shares of something, you could do a lot with it. But again, you got to look at it like the risk to reward ratio for SMR, because SMR um, is still dealing with like using water as a terms of coolant, and then also what else? Yeah, that's that. But at least they have the sign off in terms of their build, right? From the U.S. Nuclear Society or whatever. They're the ones that they've signed off. They have the certificate of their build, right? So that is a positive thing. The only one. So that's very good, very positive. Sam Altman is backing Oklo as well, and these things are relatively cheap, man. In another 2 years, Oklo could be 300, 400. It could be the next Nvidia. It could be three, four, $500. It could be the next Nvidia. SMR could be the next Nvidia. That could go from $10 to 500. It's $10 right now, but it can go to 500. So, and it's not even just because of the money factor. I honestly believe investing into nuclear energy will be the best thing for people to do coming in the next 10 years, just because all this going on with nuclear, with uranium, and all of this stuff, how it can be used, right? So you want to have some ownership in these things, so you're not left out, okay? And also maybe looking into seeing how you can work for some of these plants, some of these companies that are leveraging it, how you can work for them, because they're going to be a big thing in the next 5 years. What you need to learn, if that's mechanical engineering, if that's nuclear engineering, whatever type of thing that you can learn in order to work for those companies, because they're definitely going to be hiring a lot of people coming up in the future whenever these contracts in 2030 gets fulfilled and these data centers start getting built, because they're going to need it. They're going to need it, especially in Texas. Okay, so hopefully that was very insightful to all of you guys, and thank you.